story on what used to be my car? Let's get into it.
It all started in June of 2021. I was at an old friend's house when I saw the Nova sitting on the front lawn covered in what appeared to be moss.
Whoa, that looks really cool. Is that for sale?
Well, sure. It ran when it was parked. Used to get 50 miles per gallon back in the day.
Sure. I knew Jacob had money to blow, so I sent him a Facebook message. My friend is interested. How much do you want for the car?
Oh man, it is a very rare car. I couldn't take any less than $300 for it.
He'll take it!
After 4 of us struggled to push the car onto a trailer that was barely big enough to fit it, we got the car back to Ben's house. And so began the task of restoring the sleeping beast. We started with replacing the dry-rotted tires, which at the time didn't hold any air. Ben ordered 4 tires from Walmart, but 3 only showed up. So 1 tire has a different tread pattern than the other 3, and funny enough, that tire is still on the car today. We then began working on dropping the fuel tank, which was completely stuffed with dirt and leaves. After that, we cleaned the carburetor and cleaned up the air filter and everything, and then it ran, just not very well. A lot of the emissions lines on the vehicle were compromised or torn, so being the idiots that we were and are, we began just disconnecting them and capping them off, thinking that would help because emissions bad, but that most definitely did not help at all. The car ended up running much worse than when we'd first started, so Ben began looking on YouTube to try to find any information on how they should be run properly. He stumbled across a channel on YouTube that had exactly what he was looking for. So he contacted the gentleman and he helped us get all that sorted out, and now they're good friends to this day. With Jeff's help, we were able to get the car put back together. With the car now running, it was time for our next venture, learning how to drive a manual vehicle. As for my experience with manual vehicles before this point, was when I had my learner's permit. I drove a friend's manual car for about 15 minutes, and that didn't go very well. And for Ben, just said manuals were too confusing and complicated to drive, and he never wanted to drive one. One way that I found I could practice was by mimicking driving, by shifting through the gears and pressing the clutch. I had plenty of time to do this with how often we were troubleshooting issues and trying to get the car to run reliably.
Jacob! 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 Crank the car over!
Oh, yeah, right. Sorry. After tons of practice, we finally started to test drive the vehicle and start to learn manual by driving around Ben's yard. Ben's dad was not very happy about us driving around and ruining the yard.
You guys need to stop driving on the grass. You're leaving ruts.
Crap!
Go, go, go!
After replacing a bunch of things like light bulbs, headlights, and fluids, we thought the car would probably be ready for inspection. So we made an appointment with a local mechanic and took the car in. As funny and unbelievable as it may seem, the very day Ben was driving it in to the mechanics to get it inspected, the head gasket blew on the way there. And no, Ben did not misshift and blow the head gasket, as far as I know. So after limping it to the mechanics, we then had to tow the Nova back to Ben's house with Ben's Dakota and a logging chain, because why pay a tow truck to tow something when you have a compact truck and a chain? after many hours and 2 head gaskets later, because the first one was faulty that we put in, the car was finally back on the road. At least for the moment. What we didn't realize is that we never properly torqued down the rocker arm assembly. We didn't figure this out until we were going 70 miles per hour on the highway and we suddenly lost power. We were somehow able to limp it back to Ben's house, and after it dying down near the shop, Ben obsessively looked over the car trying to figure out what was wrong with it.
After checking the spark plugs, air box, and carburetor, I finally had one working brain cell that told me to take the valve cover off, and when I looked inside, this is what I saw. So yeah, I didn't realize Toyota was this reliable. We had some backfiring through the carb, and after a lot of process of elimination, we redid the timing on this, and then it still was doing the same thing, so we're like, oh, let's check the valves. Well, the camshaft broke, and only half of the engine was still functioning, and the car was still running, like, enough to drive it and everything. And, so yeah. Because of me going ugga-dugga with the drill instead of properly torquing down the rocker arm assembly, the whole assembly quite literally decided to snap and shatter while we were going 70 miles per hour on the highway, turning it into a 0.8 liter, 37 horsepower engine. After finding that out, I contacted Jacob and told him the news.
Ben found a refurbished head and rocker arm assembly online, which he bought, and about a week later had it installed. Properly this time. It was at this point that I decided I'd sunk enough money into a never-ending project. After contemplating selling the car and maybe getting a fraction out of it from what I had already spent, Ben urgently told me that he would buy the car from me for the full amount that I had invested in the car.
And so, after quite literally saying, "Shut up and take my money," it was now my responsibility. Within a few months of driving it, the CV axles started leaking fluid and the transmission was going out. So I had it fully rebuilt, but I had to take it back twice due to incompetent technicians not knowing how to work on a manual transmission. Currently now, as the car sits, everything, and I quite literally mean everything, has been replaced or rebuilt on this car, which now includes the engine. After a long road trip, it decided to quite literally explode, basically. And then I had to get a donor engine from another vehicle that I drove to get, and had the help of some friends to help rebuild that myself, that I then put in the car. But for the past 2 years, and all the trial and error we had with this car, and having close to 10 grand wrapped up in the car, it's been doing awesome, and it's been an amazing learning experience for me and Jacob with having owned this car. As awful as some of those memories were, I was glad to have shared them with a friend like Jacob, and I'm sure he could, and I'd hope he would think the same about me. It was our experience with this car that spiked our interest in working on and fixing older vehicles up.
And began the journey that we hope you guys will join us on.
And as a bonus, which I'd completely forgotten of when digging through my old photos and videos, we had actually found some clips we took of this thing while we were working on it back then, so we'll show them here at the end. Thanks for watching, guys. We really appreciate it. Bull friggin' crap. There's literally, oh, my light, hold on. There's literally nothing, because, like, look, if I can, see, it's moving, it's wiggling. But I can't, there's no other bolts, there's nothing! So it always says you can't open your coolant when it's hot, but they never said you can't open it when it's boiling.
Hey guys, so we picked up this Chevy Nova today, 1987 Chevy Nova. We did get it to run. Took off the top of the carburetor here, and it runs off a starting fluid and gasoline if you pour it down the hole there. And we found the fuel filter here, and we disconnected the lines to and from it, and no gas was coming out of either line. So right now we are trying to take off the gas tank to get the fuel pump out, because if no gas is getting to the fuel filter, there's a pretty good chance that the fuel pump is bad. So that is what Ben over here is doing right now. Jacking it up so we are able to get the gas tank out.